Hey everyone, welcome back to Berlin Noir. Today we are going to be building the Technical University in Berlin. So, yeah, this building is located on the very western tip of the Tiergarten in real life, and basically on the opposite side of the canal that runs its way through this area. And what's cool is there's the actual asset on the workshop of the actual real life building, and even cooler is the fact that it's actually the older version, the I guess pre World War II, before it was partially destroyed and rebuilt. So this is actually how it looked back in 1929 when this series takes place. So that's cool. Most buildings on the workshop that I'm dealing with, a lot of them are modern versions of historical buildings. For instance, not too many episodes ago with the Alexanderplatz Bahnhof, that was a modern version of it, so I had to do some tweaking on that. And other instances where I had to convert a building to PO to kind of get rid of the modern aspects, or like with the Reichstag building I unfortunately am unable to get that building out of the modern appearance due to limitations with PO, and convert it to PO, it just gets messed up. But anyways, so yeah, so this is the actual asset as it was back then. And so this area looks pretty interesting looking at it from an aerial view. I mean, for one, as you can see, I placed there those 3 rows of little trees out front of the university. Yeah, so that's based off of what I look at from the aerial view of the university and around there. I do continue the little trees to the left side of the university, right there where it's currently blank. Initially, I did not, since it didn't continue over there, at least from what I can tell. It looks as though it was mostly just bigger trees on that side, but I don't know. When I looked at it, I figured it'd be cool just to continue, those rows of trees all the way from one side to the other, because it does look pretty cool having it stretch all the way across that road. And once I build around there, it'll look pretty cool, I imagine. But so anyways, I placed these Dutch roads. So not what I'm currently placing there are paths, but the little roads there, that really narrow one that's pretty much the same width of the paths. Those are from a pretty recent addition to the workshop. There's some Dutch roads, and there's a lot of variation with these roads. You can get narrow ones, such as these, little thicker ones, and you have ones that are the asphalt is different. Sometimes it's cobblestone, sometimes a little bit more of a pavement, and then sometimes you can change the actual pavement texture with the sidewalk texture and all that. So that's cool. And yeah, so I like those paths or those roads winding through there because they match the same color as the paths I'm using. So I don't know, it just kind of blends together even though they're different. So it stands out as being different, but at the same time, it blends in. So I like the look of that. But anyways, right here I'm placing these. These are actually a 1920s housing pack, I believe, fine build. So yeah, I guess so. In the sense, so these are modern buildings, in the sense that the series is taking place in 1929, and these are in the architecture of the 1920s. So they're modern in the sense that they would have been only built a few years, in this city. But it's probably not the most realistic choice I made, considering looking at the map and aerial view of this area back in 1928. Yeah, of course I have, but I would imagine that it would have been about this building that is actually here in real life is probably built at the same time or sometime pretty close after when the university was built. Since the university is quite old itself. Not super old or anything, but I'd imagine the buildings that are adjacent and on both sides are about the same age. So yeah, like I said, these are 1920s styled housing, so not probably the most realistic choice, but I needed something to fit in this kind of interestingly shaped area, trying to mimic the building shape as well, which kind of has that interesting little half moon thing in the top right there that I have. But yeah, so it worked out, the shape, when I was messing with see what would work here. So I just went ahead and went with this modular building pack. I'm not really sure what this function at, or I guess would function as, or dormitories, or some sort of administrative building for the university, or even classrooms or labs, whatever it may be, or perhaps something totally unrelated to the university. Though I would assume it is something to do with the university since it's in the same block. Though, yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. But anyways, yeah, I don't know. Let me know if you know what these functioned as or what they actually function as now. I guess I could look at Google Maps and see, but yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think these would have functioned as, and yeah. But anyways, I use a lot of trees to cover this area. Looking at the aerial view, there are a ton of trees. Just really, covering pretty much the entirety of the, university area, with the exception of behind the university, in which there's some open grassy areas, which I do build later on in the episode. But for the most part, there are a ton of trees. So I didn't place too many trees on the inside of this little, courtyard plaza area. I wanted to make it a little more open, though I did still place a decent amount of trees. But yeah, some walkways using these paths, like I said, that they match the same color as those narrow Dutch roads that I'm using. Yeah, I like these paths a lot. I've been using them pretty much since the start of the series, really. And they're in a pack with several other paths, but those paths are kind of modern and don't really look right in this city. So this is the only one within that pack that I'm using. But yeah, so just detailing this inner courtyard, putting some open spaces and some tables for people to sit and eat or discuss with other students or faculty, whatever. But so yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't want to cover this particular area up with a ton of trees since I do that in another area of this little section, so that area left a little more blank without so many trees. But so moving on from that, we get to the very front of the university, and unfortunately I couldn't get rid of those two little tiny vanilla fountains there. I have hide it, the mod, and either I missed it, and I didn't, because I was going through trying to see, disable fountains or anything like that, and I didn't see it, so maybe it is there, I just totally missed it. But either way, I wasn't able to remove those fountains. I tried converting the building to PO, and I forget exactly what happened, but some parts of the building I think disappeared, which obviously didn't work. But I also, another reason I wanted to convert the building to PO, and probably more of a reason, is the random vanilla little vegetation that was out front of the university, which I'm now covering up with a bunch of trees. So yeah, those, I think it came out with the Parks Life DLC. Could have been earlier. I'm not really sure if it. I don't think it was in the very beginning, the base game. But honestly, they're not super bad because I think they're actually props. They're not trees, but they're not the worst. I have used them before, and they do work pretty nice for just for filling in space, because they're decently detailed. But they just looked wrong in front of the university like that, so I just went ahead and covered the entire area with trees, as you can see, which is honestly more or less accurate to how it was back then, because looking at the aerial view of the university back then, it looks covered in trees there as well. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. But here I use another vanilla asset, which this is, I think, the vanilla European University asset, which I'm pretty sure has been around since, 2015 when the game was first released. And considering that fact, it's a pretty good asset. I've used it before. There's one other place in the city in which I place it in the back area, the center area of a large residential block. Doesn't really look like a university in that sense, but just kind of wanting some buildings, so not a lot of open green area in this center of those large blocks. But yeah, like I said, considering it's an old vanilla asset, I think it looks pretty decent. Roofs, the roof texture could be improved for sure. Tiling there looks a little crappy, but from a distance and just a glancing look, it looks, it's a pretty good asset for sure. But anyways, just detailing the inner courtyard areas of this, with the cobblestone, the other side with trees, just cover too much of the area with trees. Going over to the rail yard there to steal that little building there. I guess it'd probably function as a shack or some sort of thing for, gardeners or janitors. But just trying to fill in the inner areas. But yeah, I do use a lot of these paths in all honesty. One thing I did do with the, kind of saw it there a second ago, but with those roads, the narrow Dutch roads, I cover, or not cover, but I go over the roads with a vanilla path. Or not a vanilla path, sorry, a invisible path. So, as you can see, there's actually pedestrians walking through the streets and getting mowed over currently by cars. So, I mean, aside from that fact, I definitely prefer the pedestrians walking on the street, since it does kind of look like a path, and probably in real life that would actually be the case. Because I got rid of the pavement at the very beginning of the episode, which I don't know if you noticed, but it was a really wide pavement sidewalk, which looked terrible, so I just, covered it up with grass texture there. And since I didn't like people walking on the grass, it looked weird, so I figured I'd cover the road with the invisible path, so people would use the road as a path, and I think it looks much better. But so anyways, we are finally getting to the back side of the university, and so with the back side, I did a lot more random crap, because the front and the left and right side of the university were a lot easier to tell, because there's actually pretty big buildings, and some of the paths were noticeable. But the back side of the university, it kind of just looks, at least at the aerial view that I'm looking at from back then, it all kind of blends in the black and white gray scaling of the picture. The grass, the trees, the buildings, they all just kind of bush together, so it's hard to make out exactly what there is back there. But what I did end up doing was, as you see there, I placed a few buildings there, and I repeat that a few times, just in those little rows of buildings. I'm not sure if these would be houses, dormitories, for the students, or something unrelated to the university as well. I don't really know, but I don't know. It looks a little funny now, maybe, just looking at those rows of buildings. It looks a little better towards the end, because I get rid of the paths going in. Path color and the pavement color being totally different. But I use the those 1920 housing buildings again there, just and since they're in the same area. But I plopped this little industrial building, because it actually looks to be like there's something that, a very similar building in this location, on the map that I'm looking at. Uh, Probably wasn't any sort of industrial thing, but you know, who knows? Maybe it is a technical university, so I suppose maybe some sort of trade school type thing. I mean, I'm not, yeah, I don't know what would have been taught back then at a technical university if that was trying to get people to, you know, motor vehicles or, you know, certainly not any sort of military technology. I would think there wouldn't be any sort of, or who knows, could have been, but I don't really know. But yeah, I did place that little building there since, right, but I do still cover the back area with a good amount of trees, though I do leave a lot more open green area as well, since, like I said, on the aerial view, there were more open areas for, you know, probably students to go out and, you know, eat lunch, hang out with people, study, whatever it may be. Looks like a nice area to go, but here, so what I do here is kind of a nifty little trick, another thing that you can do with procedural objects. So one thing with procedural objects you can do is convert, you know, a decal like that and lower it onto a street. So, you know, you can put a decal on the actual street and it doesn't go on the pavement, which is nice. But with here, it's the same sort of idea where you convert the decal to PO, and then as long as you have some sort of path that is raised slightly, so this wouldn't work with like the vanilla path, but for instance, the vanilla paths that are a part of the Park Life DLC, this would work, I think. I would imagine so, since they're raised. But as long as the paths are raised, you can, you know, do the same sort of thing as you would on the streets and plop the PO'd version of the decal down, and then you can get that really nice curve there like you see there. So that way you don't have to worry about, you know, any sort of, you know, plopping down the decals around that curve, which would be a real pain, and also, you know, probably wouldn't look really right because you'd have a ton of decals stacked on top of each other and you get that nasty little glitch where they're each kind of competing to be on top of one another. But yeah, so that's, you know, another cool thing you do with PO. Still learning myself all the ins and outs of PO, because I was watching a video from Gibbeth the other day, and he did something where, like, just a standard building, just a little growable building, and, like, highlighted the upper half, or not highlighted, but, like, went over all the nodes of the upper half of the building, and then did something where, like, it converted all those nodes into just, like, one. So that way you can control and raise, lower the entirety of the building without having to go individually through each thing, which, yeah, looks useful, which I'll probably be using in the future once I, you know, figure out how exactly to do it. But yeah, it's a very good mod. You know, I'm honestly, probably everyone that uses it is still probably trying to, you know, they're still learning some of the ins and outs of the mod itself. But anyways, we're getting pretty close to the end of the episode. I just do some very last minute detailing here, just plopping down crates for whatever reason, I don't know. I also plot down some trucks, so I guess this is more of an industrial area, perhaps? I'm not really sure. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you all next time.